Hey everyone, welcome to 10 Movies, where every season we focus on one actor through 10 of their most iconic films. This season, we've decided to dive into the work of Mr. Harrison Ford, actor, icon, and arguably the most handsome man to wear a fedora. I'm Hemel Javeri, and with me is my co-host and friend, Brian Minter.
Hemel, how dare you, sir? This week we are talking about the tense political action thriller 1994's Clear and Present Danger.
Brian, don't you come in here and bark at me like a junkyard dog.
Dare you, Hemel.
1994 film based on airport novelist Tom Clancy. Was he big before these movies came out, or did these movies make him big?
I don't know.
He
certainly has a fan base.
He is keeping the publishing industry alive. Him and Dan Brown are the only thing
Tom
holding
Clancy's
up.
been dead for a number of years, so I don't know that he's keeping the public. So maybe you shouldn't be so mean about the poor man.
I know we're here to talk about Clear and Present Danger, but I have to say, I went to look for Clear and Present Danger to try to read it as a book, and
For this podcast?
well, whatever, for multiple reasons.
You barely do any research. You won't even look at Wikipedia, and you're going to read a 600-page book about rockets and submarines.
But now they're just using this poor man's name. It's like, it's like a Tom Clancy book written by somebody totally
By some guy.
different.
Well, I imagine his style isn't maybe that hard to get right. But I don't know. I haven't read any of his books.
Listen, I have not written any submarine/military thrillers, so good for Tom Clancy.
Yeah, what would you call this? Is it a military thriller, a political thriller, a hot boiler? What's the genre here?
Well, I think here specifically the genre is a military political thriller, right?
Can we throw the word espionage in?
Somewhat, but
Come on, there's CIA guys all over the place.
Yeah, we need to talk about this. I have so much to say about this movie, but
All right, we've gotten wildly off track.
Yeah, we
because
have.
you made us talk about Tom Clancy. What, Hemel, is the story of Clear and Present Danger?
I couldn't tell you if I tried. It has something to do with the world's most naive deputy director of CIA intelligence, Jack Ryan, who has never seen a bad thing that has broken the law happen inside the CIA, even though
really
he's the
surprised by corruption as a CIA executive.
deputy director of intelligence.
No, he's not actually the deputy director. His buddy, James Earl Jones, is the deputy director. He's an analyst.
He's an analyst, and he is now filling in for the deputy director because he got knighted or whatever the fuck happens. Anyway,
cancer.
I know, but he got
by cancer.
He got tapped to fill in because his boss has cancer.
Yeah, and I don't know that that's how the org chart works, right?
No, I don't really think you can do that.
Just pick your favorite analyst to be the deputy director.
It's gonna be you, buddy.
Seems like it's a Senate confirmable job.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of
Someone
people will
had to
have
sign off on that.
stuff to say about it.
Anyway, so he's elevated to deputy director.
He is an
despite
analyst.
His naivete.
He is an analyst. He is elevated to deputy director, which kind of sets us up for somebody who is an outsider looking in, not really into the mix of it. He starts off very naive, stays very naive, if you ask me. Starts off very naive as somebody who wants to do a good job and impress the president and is sticking to the facts. And his nickname is Boy Scout. He runs afoul of internal politics.
Because no one like that is actually successful at the CIA.
No one is successful. Everybody realizes this guy's a rube. We can't work with him. Bury him as an analyst shuffling paper. So he is in this position. He runs across a conspiracy. He figures out that actually the military that blew up a giant drug cartels hideout.
Well, the other CIA guy is in cahoots with the National Security Advisor, and they're prosecuting a secret war at the behest of the president against this giant drug cartel, the Cali cartel.
The Cali cartel.
And it's illegal, and they shouldn't be doing it, but they're doing it anyway.
They're doing it anyway for personal reasons. They're not doing it because they care about the war on drugs. They're doing it because that guy fucked with the president's best friend.
The president's buddy was in cahoots with Escobedo, the czar of the drug family, And so the president's
Poor
like, you
man.
go down there and you get him. And so then they've got their little war.
And I just have to say, so hilarious because these people have never seen Narcos, but Escobedo is clearly a poor man's Pablo Escobar. Like, we get it. That makes sense. Anyway, they go down there, and then there's a rogue mission where the soldiers they hired to blow up everything get stranded. And
No, hold on now. They didn't
well, they get, you're right.
betrayed.
They were betrayed and they were
Importantly.
left for dead. And so Harrison Ford, being the good guy that he is, goes down there and has to get them out.
Gotta
And
rescue our boys.
then they come back and he has a very unprofessional and emotional conversation with the president of the
But he
United
calls him
States.
sir. He still calls him sir because he still respects the office. That's the kind of guy
Respects
Jack
the
Ryan
office.
is.
Anyway, this is Clear and Present Danger. I remember liking it much, much more the first time I saw it when I was young and naive.
Well, now, when you were young and saw it for the first time, were you a middle-aged father?
I was not a middle-aged.
Interesting. So you were out of the target demographic. But
I was
upon
not.
rewatching it, did you enjoy the film?
I did enjoy it because I love these like 90s action movies, which is like heavy on plot and thrillers.
It's very well made.
It's really well made. There's like enough twists and turns to kind of keep you interested. But I will say the thing that was just like I just could not overcome it was just like how ridiculously naive the character is. And in this day and age, you could not make a film with a character like this. Even like it was just absurdly naive.
Well, he's I think it's a really well-made film. It's like the plot is extremely complex, but it's not hard to follow. You always know what the stakes are and what the characters are doing. It's one thing that's funny about it is every character, the second they walk on screen, it is very clear to the viewer if they are a good guy or a bad guy. There's no in between.
Yeah.
And whatever you immediately clock them as, that will govern their choices for the rest of the film, and there will be no exceptions,
Exactly.
right? Like whoever the bad guys are always going to do bad guy things. Good guys are always going to do good guy things. It's it's not a character movie, of course. It's just a story. Right?
No, it's a plot movie. Like it's a plot thriller. Like I talk about the 90s movies like placing a lot of emphasis on things like paperwork and telephone calls. Like that's what this movie's like so crazy analog about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's actually a great scene, weirdly interesting to watch, where Jack Ryan's trying to print out the data,
emails!
and the evil CIA guy's trying to delete the files, and they're in different offices. And you're like, the printer won't work. It's out of ink.
He like grabs a piece of paper from the printer.
He's waving it. Yeah.
Shoves it in his face. Like it's a very analog movie, which I think as we are where we are right now.
Great
feels
touch
really
that the printer was out of paper, though, at one point.
and tactile.
He's like, damn it! I know the secret files are getting erased because the printer's out of paper.
Anyway, yeah, I do think that like the naivete of the character is a thing that is something that I can't really get over. But let's talk about the rest of the cast before we get into Harrison Ford.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of cast. We probably can't do them all justice. Who else is in the film? We've got James Earl Jones, who plays Admiral Jim Greer, who's very like noble-hearted, good guy, mentor, patron. He's not like he's kind of sidelined because he got cancer, which was sad for the character. But yeah, like we keep kind of cutting back to him, and like he's always giving Jack some fatherly advice. So he's there.
We have Anne Archer as Kathy Ryan, who plays Jack Ryan's wife.
She's the only woman character? There aren't any women in this whole world. Like the whole world is just men.
Trust me, I've been holding my tongue about this. We will get into it in a minute. But there is a young Thora Birch. She plays his daughter, Sally.
She's cute.
And the only other woman in this movie is
strangled. A secretary who gets strangled.
Well, there's also a DEA agent. Like she's the head of the DEA Venezuela. But let me tell you,
of the lack of moral ambiguity. Like the second she comes on the screen, you're like, oh, she's one of the good guys.
Yeah,
always one of the good guys.
One of the good guys, but also she's basically coded as a dude. We'll talk about this in a minute. Yeah, she's coded as a man. Anyway, but the most important part of this, like we have Joaquin D. Almeida, I think, as Felix Cortez, and then Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, so
Willem Dafoe with
Felix
like the
Cortez,
yes,
he's the anti Jack Ryan, right?
Yeah.
Like he is also an intelligence master. He works for the bad drug cartel. And just as Jack Ryan is trying to unravel the conspiracy, he's actually working with the CIA. Like he's sort of setting all these terrible events in motion. So he becomes Jack Ryan's sort of nemesis. And at the end, of course, they fist fight in an abandoned warehouse.
So we have him, and then Willem Dafoe with incredible blonde hair.
Yeah, so Willem Dafoe is like a CIA like black ops dude, and he's put in charge of like the secret paramilitary mission. So he's Yeah, he's
But he's not. So his name is John Clark. He's not officially CIA, but he clearly does a lot of work for
he's
the
like a
CIA.
mercenary that does that kind of thing.
Because
When they need a war started, they call this guy.
Yeah, so he is technically not a good dude and not within the institution, which I think is important. But the institution uses guys like Willem Dafoe. And then,
I want to come back to how institutions are portrayed in this film.
Yeah.
What's his name? Miguel Sandoval plays the drug cartel boss.
Oh yes.
Very, very menacing, right? He's very jovial and he's very urbane, but then something goes wrong and he'll beat you on the head with a baseball bat. So he was the good like drug czar, drug kingpin type.
Yeah, it's so funny watching this movie after having sat through like 8 seasons of Narcos, and
I've never seen Narcos. I don't have the context there.
It's great. I know all about the Cali cartel now.
I think the only other actor of note, Benjamin Bratt, appears in a pretty small role. He's like the head of the he's like the head army guy who goes down to have the secret war. But I don't feel like his character does a lot. I can't quite recall.
You know, he doesn't do a lot, and frankly, I don't think Harrison Ford's character does a lot.
Well, he does a lot. He just doesn't have any interiority.
Are we ready to talk about Harrison Ford?
Yeah, so there's lots of people in the movie, but there's no characters in the movie, so it doesn't even really matter.
Oh, I think it does matter.
Well, I meant all the other people, right? They're all just doing their bit.
Yeah, they're just like his arch nemesis, Bob Ritter, is just a guy who's like an evil guy. The NSA, there's nothing to them aside from.
Yeah, your job is to either be good or be bad,
and
you come on screen and you do that.
And that's okay, actually, because this is a well-made thriller, and I don't really need hours of backstory for these guys.
Yeah, like, I think, the sort of espionage genre is often... Yeah, this sort of murkiness, Hall of Mirrors effect is very common. This is not that kind of movie, right? Like, even in the rare instance when the characters are confused, right? Like, if at one point Willem Dafoe thinks that Harrison Ford's betrayed him, but he pulls a gun on him, but we know all along, like, oh, that didn't happen, they're going to work it out. Like, we're never confused about who's good and who's bad and what they're doing.
So I'm curious. Let's talk about Harrison Ford in this movie. There are that's the wrong movie. Wrong movie, but every time Harrison Ford comes on screen, that kind of plays in the back of my head. It's the Fordness of the film that I think we should talk about.
Yeah, so what are some typical defining characteristics of Harrison Ford on film?
Well, this is funny. We generally think about Harrison Ford basically because of his most iconic roles, as sometimes being the anti-hero.
Which Jack Ryan is not.
Jack Ryan is not the anti-hero.
In fact, Jack Ryan is the platonic ideal of the hero. He's an incredibly uninteresting character, right? Like, he's so blandly virtuous at all times. And this is, you probably know this, but like Jack Ryan is like a jobs program for like white leading men in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Alec Baldwin, Harrison Ford, Chris Pine, Ben Affleck, and John Krasinski have all portrayed Jack Ryan. He never gets more interesting.
No,
he's always the most boring guy.
He is interchangeable white dude over and over and over and over again, and that is all he is supposed to be.
Yeah, no one interprets the character because there's nothing to interpret.
No,
he has no internal struggles at all.
No, he is an analyst. And it's so funny because considering how Harrison Ford like made his career and like what he's actually good at, the fact that he slipped so easily into Jack Ryan, and let's be honest, easily the best Jack Ryan out of all of them. Like Chris Pine, Ben Affleck, Alec Baldwin, easily the best Jack Ryan.
So my favorite of all those movies is Hunt for Red October. So I do have a soft spot for the Alec Baldwin.
Yeah, but he didn't get a second movie.
No, I wonder why. I wonder why they didn't care for his. Maybe he wasn't bland and Boy Scoutish enough.
Well, I think it's like he was. My other thing here is that the key factor with all of these other actors is that they were just slightly too good looking to be Jack Ryan.
Yeah, when you think about those other guys, Harrison Ford he's not that he's unattractive, he's a man, but he's more of he's an average guy.
He's an average guy. He is like, and his face looks like an average face. That's like, he's a guy that looks like he used to be handsome.
Yeah, you can't really buy Alec Baldwin as a sort of mousy analyst type.
Right, you definitely can't buy Chris Pine as a mousy analyst. He's like way too hot to be a CIA analyst.
Chris Pine's better looking than a young Alec Baldwin?
I think everybody thinks that.
Do they? No. Young Alec Baldwin was very handsome.
Was he really?
Oh, yeah. Have you never saw The Hunt for Red October?
I mean, I guess I have to watch it now. Anyway, so
let's get back to Harrison Ford.
Anyway, anti-hero. Does he play a rogue in this one? He does not.
He does not.
Does he have charm in this film?
Oh, interesting. I don't see, very charming in a lot of his roles. Jack Ryan is not charming.
No, Jack Ryan is not very charming at all. I will also say one thing that a lot of times Harrison Ford, like his bread and butter is like he just looks at the camera with a befuddled expression on his face, and that does a lot of work for him, and that works for him here. Like there's a lot of befuddledness happening.
And again, we think we talked about this when we watched Raiders of the Lost Ark. Unlike a modern action hero who is never uncertain and is always going to conquer the day, Harrison Ford and the Jack Ryan character, he's often out of his depth. Like he's startled or shocked or even frightened by what's happening.
Yeah.
And you see on his face that I don't think he knows what he's going to do next.
Yeah.
Which I think actually helps a lot. I think that makes the movie more tense and more visceral.
Yeah, I do think he's befuddled here. He tends to star in dad movies, and this is like...
Oh, the daddest movie of them all.
Daddest movie of all. Dads love this movie.
Golf, presidents, submarines, got clear and present danger.
I have also maintained that Harrison Ford is kind of a dick in most of his roles.
But Jack Ryan is not a dickish character.
No, Jack Ryan, not at all in this.
He's not anything. That's the problem.
He is like just annoyingly perfect husband, which is the worst. And my final piece of criteria... Moms love him and dads want to be him.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think dads do want to be Jack Ryan because he's a rich, awesome, virtuous Marine, CIA, special ops spy guy.
I think
dads love.
And I think moms love him because he's like handsome, stable family guy who's not stepping out on his wife the minute he hits Columbia.
Yeah, in actuality, I feel like a high-ranking intelligence official who constantly travels the world is probably carrying on multiple adulterous affairs.
Yeah, it's basically the Secret Service wheels up, rings off.
But Jack Ryan would never, right?
No.
Jack Ryan wouldn't even look at another woman.
No, Jack Ryan wouldn't. Jack
he
Ryan
wouldn't
knows
take a drink. He wouldn't stay out late.
He's home and in bed by 9:15 every
and
night.
He's not doing that to overcome his demons. He's just that's what he does, right?
He's
he's like a church deacon.
He's just like a boring guy who loves to be an analyst.
He's such a boring guy, right?
There's nothing. I don't, and that's fine, right? Like, I think that the Jack Ryan character is actually not supposed to be interesting.
He's a plot driver.
But there are levels in this film that I just, especially watching it in hindsight, the kind of naivete and what we are supposed to believe about institutions and governments and the power of individuals. I don't know. It's because we're so cynical or because I am so cynical. But it just is absurd. It's laughable at this stage.
Well, I feel, Himmel, you were talking about what this movie had to say.
I am talking about that.
So why don't we move into our next segment?
Yeah.
What did this movie have to say?
What did this movie have to say? I think I said it pretty well, right? This is a movie, which its entire premise is that institutions are good. Some people may be bad.
So, no, I don't know that I agree, right? I think what is potentially interesting about this as a text... The institution, you might think that Tom Clancy hero submarine president movie would have respect for institutions and portray them positively. But I think the institutions are corrupt and fallible, right? The CIA, the National Security Advisor guy, the presidency itself, even the military to some extent. The institutions are not to be trusted necessarily. Within them, there are good guys. There's Jack Ryan, there's Willem Dafoe, there's James Earl Jones, and we are meant to understand that those are the real, that's the real CIA, the real presidency, the real military, the good guys.
Okay,
but I think the institutions themselves, perhaps refreshingly, are presented in this is not a plausible or realistic movie, but I think that the movie does not think we should automatically trust any of these things.
I had not thought about it that way, actually. I guess I was thinking about it through the framework. So the movie that I'm going to compare it to, which it doesn't really it's not an apples to apples comparison, but it's A Few Good Men, right? When we watched that film and we talked about it, that is Sorkin loves his institutions.
Loves the institutions, yeah.
He loves those institutions.
They can only be failed.
Exactly.
In his world.
Right. They are the absolute pinnacle.
But I don't think Clancy is.
No, I think you're right. I think you're right in that I don't think Clancy is saying that because there are every single interaction that Jack Ryan has, aside from the people that we know are supposed to be bad, are people who are willing to break the rules to do the right thing, right? It's the DEA agent who's okay, I'll make copies of this tape for you and send it to you. It's the code breaker who's okay, I'll help you hack into this person's computer.
Yeah,
right?
I don't think that guy. I don't think you would hack into
No.
like the director of the CIA.
No, I'm like,
secret
my
files.
dude, that's not a thing that is going to be great for your,
Yeah, like
for
the
your
question
career.
there, I think, is like the CIA, which is people love to make movies about the stupid CIA.
Yeah.
Is the CIA like, does Jack Ryan and Jim Greer, are they the real CIA, the good noble heroes, or are Cutter and Ritter the real CIA, like the corrupt, lacking integrity? And I don't know which it is exactly, but I think the movie doesn't automatically present the CIA as a force for good or for honor.
I think that it's more about the halls of power, right?
Oh, yeah, this movie loves the halls of power.
It loves the halls of power. It loves White House, and it loves long walks for the president, implying things. And I don't think the president is obviously presented as very good. But like you said, Jack Ryan respects the office, so we are supposed to respect the office.
Yeah, I think that we're meant to see that like there is a good and true America, and Jack Ryan is of it.
Right.
And these other bad actors are failing.
Right, rather than being able to acknowledge that, no, this is what the system actually is, right? Like, do you know, like every time something terrible happens, there's somebody on social media is like, this isn't the real America. That is what Clear and Present Danger is trying to convince you of.
Yeah.
Like, this is not the real America. The real America would never do stuff like this. Like you said, Jack Ryan is a real America. When that's bullshit. This is the real America. The real America is starting terrible drug policy. It is starting wars in Central America that like destabilize the entire region just so that they can get absolutely nothing out of it.
Yeah, so I mean, this movie is not a direct analog to any of the secret wars we began in Latin America in the 80s. But clearly it's inspired by them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the movie is genuinely, I don't even understand like the geopolitical stance of the movie, because like, the whole premise of the movie is that like people in positions of power in the United States government are willing to do like terrible corrupt things and get into bed with terrible corrupt people in order to maintain or amass power. And there are good heroes who will stop them, and while the American flag flaps behind them. But yeah, I don't know where this movie actually stands on those institutions, and I don't think it's necessarily in favor of them.
I mean, yeah, I don't think it's in favor of them, but I think
it fetishizes them.
Yeah, I just don't think it's actually realizing the reality that the CIA does bad shit all the time.
Yeah, the world would be better off if there had never been a CIA.
Exactly. Like, it still has this, like, well, maybe they can be good, and it's not the real America, without acknowledging, no, this is the real America, and this is like the path of destruction that the country and these departments have blazed.
Yeah, you got to figure that the Cutter and Ritter characters are actually much more like true CIA leaders than the Jack Ryan character is completely implausible as a CIA.
And you know what's funny? I think
deputy director.
We have gone on this, but I will say this last thing, which is that one of the messages here is that power corrupts, right? Like all the people who actually have power are fairly corrupt, aside from Greer, James Earl Jones, and Brian technically is just like an interloper into this world. He doesn't actually belong. He doesn't actually have power, and that is why he can be.
Yeah, power is and of course he doesn't even want it. He's like, oh, I can't be in charge. Yeah. I'm a Boy Scout.
And lastly, I do want to talk about the world of men.
Well, there aren't any women in the world. I learned from A Clear and Present Danger. There's a couple in subservient roles, but
they're all the only women are wives, daughters, secretaries
Secretary/mistresses who get strangled.
Secretary/mistresses who get strangled and are only the beneficiaries of condescending remarks from their bosses. Why don't you take a couple of days off, honey?
Sleepy.
I'm not going to be around. There's nothing for you to do. And then, like I said, I think the woman who plays the DEA agent, she's just coded as male because she is a person in power, and everybody else in power is a man. Mm. And you're just supposed to read her as also a man because she's not portrayed as a wife. She's not portrayed as like a love interest or anything like that. She might as well be a dude.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I maybe that's that character, and that's not even a major character, right? But
no, she has like 2 lines.
But you could see, she's one of the good guys. You could see them and like, wait a minute, let's make one of these 40 dudes a lady, so people don't get on us too bad. There's no, there are no women in this world of, but like, that's definitely what these kind of things are. But like, that's really what this world was in the 80s, right? Like the halls of power and the decisions and the clandestine in the military. It's, women weren't given access to any of those things. Yeah,
but I don't think that it's as simple as saying, it's just depicting what was
I'm not
accurate.
defending those.
Yeah. It's not. I don't think it's that. I think it's just a lack of actually understanding that women were actually involved in the world, and they could be things. Literally, he just cries on his wife's shoulder. Like, that's all she does. She has a couple of, like, sympathetic stares. It's just,
there was plenty, like, there weren't many women in these kinds of jobs back then, but there's plenty of opportunity to have women play an important role in the story, which the movie does not.
No, you could flesh out any of these characters. And again, it's just very much like, yep, this is a man's world, and women are only here as, like, that decoration.
Yeah, How Dare You, Ma'am would have made this a very different movie, I think.
Do you have a movie MVP?
Oh, who did I enjoy the most who was not Harrison Ford? Well, did you have a favorite character or actor in the movie?
I mean, I did, but there's really only one person, and I don't want to take it away from you. I went first last time, I thought.
Oh, okay. Well, I really enjoyed Donald Moffat as the president.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so he's...
Wait, that's not the guy from Babe?
I don't know. I never saw Babe.
James Cromwell?
Oh, no, it's not James Cromwell.
Oh.
It's you would think it was James Cromwell.
I mean, I looked him up, and...
Because I guess all older white men look alike to you. No, so he's the president. He's got this real, like, he's the only character with any kind of humor in the film. Like, he's got this, like, sort of George Bushish, blustery, like, well, let's go down and get the money, right? And he's kind of funny in these scenes. And then at the end, there's this, it's ridiculous, but also delightful. This end scene where Harrison Ford confronts him, and he's like, "You're going to come in here and you're going to bark at me," and he's like, "How dare you, sir?" Great, wonderful. But,
by the way, I just wanted to point out that Brian woke up his wife to rewatch the scene.
So because my wife is not a middle-aged father, she fell asleep multiple times watching Clear and Present Danger. It's not short. It's not a short movie. And I'm like, wake up! They're about to do the scene where they blow up all the SUVs. Incredible action scene.
Incredible.
She didn't care. And then at the end, it's like, wake up! He's going to say, "How dare you, sir? You can't miss it." But in that end, Donald Moffat is kind of like, blustery and sort of, almost funny. But then in the end, you realize he's really, like, vicious. He's like a ferocious, malignant person. And you see that, and this is, I think, a great little bit of acting. He has been, like, putting on his folksy Chuck Star.
Yeah.
Before, I don't know if George Bush had been president yet. But
he's playing the role of, like, nice guy president.
Yeah, sort of a minor-ish role, important to the story, but not a lot of screen time. But yeah, I thought every scene with him was terrific. I
had not really thought about it this way, but it is a very unusual, like, last scene in a movie because there's so much conflict in that last scene versus, like, trying to tie things up very neatly here. It's like Jack Ryan realizing that he's been a fool and naive, but, like, his duty compels him to stand up to the president.
He still says "sir."
He
respects the office. But now you seem to feel that was a very obvious choice, and you were surprised that I chose the president. Who did you most enjoy?
Oh, Willem Dafoe.
Willem Dafoe, yeah.
I picked Willem Dafoe. I think he's phenomenal. A young Willem Dafoe, I may say, and just an incredible use of blonde hair. I've never seen him with blonde hair. Just great.
Willem Dafoe always brings the goods, right? Like, he's
really
always
does.
better than he needs to be for these kinds of movies.
Yeah, he has a few scenes, and his action really picks up in the third act. But, like, in the first part of the film, you kind of think of him as, like, weird and creepy and sleazy, and then he rehabilitates himself. Like, yes, he is willing to do bad things because that is what is asked of him. And as a military guy, he's done that through his entire career. But, like, he cares about his men, right? Like, the easiest way to make a bad character sympathetic is to be like, I care about my men, and that's what they did.
You definitely realize right away that this character is one of the good guys, and so he does good guy things. Were you to pull the camera back in a sort of, geopolitical or ideological sense, it's not really good that he's prosecuting a secret war and blowing things up in the jungles of Colombia. Excuse me. But yes, we're not really meant to look at the character in that way.
You're not. He's a guy who is kind of following orders to a degree, right? He's being paid for it, but...
The action sequence with the SUVs in the alley, my God, it's so gripping.
You thought it was good? I mean,
did you not like that?
No, I liked it. I thought it was really good. I think that my brain has just been Swiss cheese by so much John Wick that, like... the standards are very different now, because when we look at the violence in Clear and Present Danger and a lot of movies from the mid-90s and the 90s generally... is very realistic, right? Like, it's very, it's
scary, it's disorienting.
Yeah, it's scary, and it's not clean. And now when we have violence on TV, it's all very stylized. Like, it's so fake, and we know that people
John Wick would have, like, carefully shot each of the guys with the rocket launchers, and Dwayne Johnson would have, like, picked up a car door and knocked them. Yeah, they would
exactly. Like, they would have just, like, solved the problem very quickly. And, one thing we haven't talked about that I think it's worth mentioning is that they do make Jack Ryan an analyst who can't fight. Like, he does not have very many action scenes. Like, there's a lot of action happening around him, but they never lose sight of the fact he's an analyst. So he's not like ripping off his dad windbreaker, which, by the way, incredible costuming touch.
Very dad.
Very dad. He's not ripping it off and like throwing a billion punches. Like he's constantly being saved. He's constantly only landing one punch and then somebody else like helps him out.
Yeah, I think the character canonically is a former Marine.
Yeah.
And again, if a Dwayne Johnson character is a former Marine, is going to constantly be kicking ass all the time. But I love that Jack Ryan is not kicking ass, that he's like, oh my God, they're shooting rockets at us.
Yeah, he's like,
as you would be.
And he's just walking around Colombia with his dad windbreaker and bad hair and like hoping he doesn't get shot.
Yeah, if you're a Colombian guy who owns a helicopter and someone walks in with like a windbreaker and a bandana around their neck and those like Ray-Bans, you're like, oh, it's a CIA.
It's the CIA guy. Yeah,
obviously,
CIA
this
guy.
is the CIA guy.
Anyway, I think this is good. He's my MVP. Good job, Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, good job, Willem Dafoe. He probably got paid behind this. So I think that's all we have to say about A Clear and Present Danger.
It's not, actually, because I would
not?
like...
There's more to say?
We have to talk about where this fits into the canon.
Oh, of course we do. I can't believe it. I'm disappointed in myself.
We need to talk about where this fits into the canon of Harrison Ford films because we are past... He's old now. He's an old,
no, he's not old. This
man.
is the early 90s. He's middle-aged.
He's middle-aged. He's not old.
He's old now.
Yeah, he's old now.
He's making a new Indiana Jones movie. 100
and they're
years
like,
old.
Anyway, this is his, like, he's settling into the dad era. He's going to be playing a lot of dads. And, like, I think we've talked about this before, but, like, he's basically had a steady and, like, stable rise. Like, he's never fallen off a cliff like a lot of people do. He's been really consistent, and in the 90s, he finds a great franchise that he's really good at, and he just, like, rides that all the way through.
Yeah, so, he's got some of his most iconic roles, Indiana Jones, Han Solo. He did 2 Jack Ryan movies. He did Patriot Games, which I think preceded this one, and then he did Clear and Present Danger. I feel like this is a very well-known movie for him. Like, I feel like this is a solid top 5 in Harrison Ford canon movie. Would you disagree?
No, I think it is top 5 canon. I think that he just plays good iconic characters, and Jack Ryan is one of those iconic characters, and definitely way below Han Solo and Indiana Jones, but
the Jack Ryan character is like, I guess it is iconic just because it's.
But you don't when you think of Jack Ryan, you think of Harrison Ford. You're not thinking of Chris Pine and his bird legs, okay?
Like, you're not thinking of Chris Pine, certainly, but I think you're just thinking of whatever Jack Ryan you saw last, because the character has no defining traits.
You're thinking of Harrison Ford. Unless you are an infant that only grew up on the guy from The Office, you are thinking of Harrison Ford.
Well, I will repeat. Hunt for Red October is the best of the Jack Ryan movies, but Clear and Present Danger is a strong number 2.
All right, well, if you feel differently than Brian, and if you actually think that Alec Baldwin was better as Jack Ryan, you can let him know on Twitter.
Get at us on Twitter while you are downloading the latest and exciting episode of the 10 Movies Podcast. Don't forget to rate us on the podcast listening application of your choice, which is very helpful for the hardworking staff here at the 10 Movies Podcast.
All right, we will see you next week.